During dinner, my sister said she was pregnant and that the father is my husband. But then I revealed a secret. You know when you think you know the people closest to you? When you believe that? No matter what problems exist, certain lines would never be crossed? Well, I thought so too. My name is Marina, I'm 29 years old, and this is the story of how I discovered that some people are capable of anything to get what they want. It was a Thursday in March when I received news of my promotion. After 4 years working as a project manager at a tech company in Austin, Texas, I would finally be commercial director. I couldn't stop smiling at the office. I called David, my husband, and Beatrice, my younger sister, to share the joy. Let's celebrate at Terrazzo tonight, I suggested. Terrazzo was that chic Italian restaurant downtown, where a meal cost more than minimum wage, but I could afford it. I worked hard for this. I arrived at the restaurant first, wearing that navy blue dress that David always said looked perfect on me. I chose a table in a more secluded corner. I wanted privacy to celebrate. The dining room was full of executives and elegant couples, the kind of environment where I felt comfortable after years building my career. When I saw them arriving together, I found it strange. Beatrice was radiant, with a smile I hadn't seen in a long time, and David seemed nervous. He always got a bit uncomfortable in expensive places, but there was something different that night, a tension in the air that I couldn't identify. Congratulations on the promotion, Mari! Beatrice hugged me with suspicious effusiveness. She was never very demonstrative with affection, especially with me. We ordered a $200 bottle of Chianti, and I started telling them about the new projects I would lead, the 40% salary increase, the possibilities for international growth. Beatrice listened with too much attention. David kept fidgeting with his napkin. Actually, Beatrice interrupted in the middle of my excitement, we also have news to share. She took David's hand across the table, and my stomach knotted inexplicably. I'm pregnant. The world stopped. Literally stopped. The restaurant voices became a distant buzz. The lights seemed to flicker, and I stared at my sister's hand intertwined with my husband's, as if it were a mirage. Pregnant. Beatrice was pregnant with David's child. I know it's a complicated situation. David spoke for the first time since they arrived, his voice coming out hoarse. But it happened, and we fell in love. They watched me with a mixture of expectation and poorly disguised satisfaction. It was as if they were waiting for me to explode, scream, make a scene that would give the other tables something interesting to talk about later. But I couldn't do anything but stare. My sister, Beatrice, whom I helped pay for college when our parents couldn't, was there holding my husband's hand, pregnant with his child, telling me this on the day of my promotion. How long? I managed to ask, my voice coming out strangely calm. 3 months, Beatrice replied, running her hand over her still imperceptible belly. It started right after your birthday. My birthday had been in December. It was May. 3 months of betrayal, 3 months of lies, 3 months of them laughing at me while I worked 12 hours a day to get this promotion I so wanted to share with the people I loved. Marina, say something, David asked. And for the first time in years, I really looked at him, really paid attention to the man I had been married to for 4 years. He looked relieved, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, as if this was liberating for him. What do you want me to say? I asked, still in that strange voice that didn't sound like mine. Congratulations? Beatrice laughed, a nervous laugh, but genuine. Look, Mari, I know it's not easy, but these things happen. Love is love, right? And the baby... She ran her hand over her belly again. The baby needs both parents together. I picked up my purse slowly, left 2 $50 bills on the table, more than enough to cover my part of the bill, and stood up. I'm going home. You do whatever you want. As I walked toward the exit, I heard David calling my name, but I didn't turn around. In the wall mirror of the restaurant, I could see their reflections still sitting at the table. Beatrice was smiling. Throughout childhood, Beatrice lived in my shadow, and this irritated her deeply. I was the older daughter, the responsible one, the one who got good grades without having to try very hard. She was the youngest, the spoiled one, the one our parents protected from everything. But for some reason, this was never enough for her. We grew up in a middle-class family in San Antonio. Our father worked as an accountant at an oil company. Our mother was an elementary school teacher. We weren't rich, but we didn't lack anything either. Even so, Beatrice always had the impression that she deserved more. When I got a full scholarship to study business administration at the University of Texas, Beatrice made sure to say it was rich girl's luck. When I graduated with honors and got an internship at a multinational in Austin, she commented that I always knew how to sell myself. When I bought my first apartment at 25, she asked if I wasn't being too ambitious. The worst part is that she really believed she deserved the same things I had, but without the effort, as if success was a matter of luck or favoritism, not hard work and sacrifice. Beatrice studied graphic design at a public university, graduated without much distinction, and since then jumped from job to job, always complaining that bosses didn't recognize her potential. Our parents always tried to balance things out. When I bought my new Honda Civic, they bought a used one for her too. When I started earning well, they increased the help they gave her to pay rent for a small apartment in downtown San Antonio. It was as if they were trying to compensate for my success by keeping Beatrice at the same level, artificially. She always asked about my salary, my investments, the apartment's value. Just sisterly curiosity, she'd say. But there was an intensity in the way she asked that bothered me. Now I understood it wasn't curiosity. It was pure envy, mixed with greed that I refused to see. When I met David at a work party 5 years ago, Beatrice made sure to say he wasn't my type. He was handsome, nice, worked as a salesman at a BMW dealership. He earned reasonably well by Texas standards, about $5,000 a month with commissions, but nothing compared to my $8,000 salary that soon became $12,000. Still, I fell in love. He was fun, affectionate, made me laugh after stressful days at the office. David had a simplicity that attracted me, an uncomplicated way of seeing life that contrasted with my nature of always planning 3 steps ahead. Beatrice was always polite with David, but I noticed a certain tension, especially when we all went out together and the bill arrived. David sometimes felt embarrassed when I paid for restaurants that cost $100 per person, or when we bought concert tickets that cost $200 each. Beatrice observed all this with that calculating look I knew well, but preferred to ignore. "You support him, don't you?" she asked once, when David went to the bathroom during a family lunch at Olive Garden. "I don't support him," I replied, irritated. "We split things proportionally to our income." It was true. David paid the bills he could, groceries, gas, some household bills, and I covered the rest. It worked for us. But for Beatrice, that was more proof that I had too much luck. A brilliant career, a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in Austin, a dedicated husband, investments that grew month by month, as if I hadn't fought for every achievement, as if everything had fallen from the sky. I got home, and the apartment was exactly as I had left it that morning. Made bed, dishes washed, everything in place. It was strange how life could completely fall apart, and things could remain exactly the same. David's toothbrush was still there in the bathroom, his clothes in the closet, that ridiculous Dallas Cowboys mug he'd gotten in a dealership promotion. I sat on the beige leather sofa in the living room, still in my dress and high heels, and stared into the void. My head was strangely quiet, as if my brain had shut down the emotion processing system. I knew I should be crying, screaming, breaking things, but all I felt was a kind of numbness, like when you hit your elbow and can't feel your arm for a few minutes. David didn't come home that night, obviously. At 2 a.m, I received a message. "I'm at B's house. We'll talk tomorrow." B. He called my sister B, as if they'd been intimate for years, as if I didn't exist, as if our 4 years of marriage were just an inconvenient obstacle that had finally been removed. I spent the night awake, walking through the 120 square meters of the apartment, trying to understand how I had gotten there. How hadn't I noticed the signs? Were there signs? David working later in recent weeks. Beatrice asking about my schedule whenever she called. Both of them arriving together at the restaurant as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Now that I thought about it, Beatrice had appeared a lot in Austin in recent months. "I came to see some clients," she'd say. Beatrice worked as a freelance graphic designer, so it was plausible that she had projects in the city. But Austin was only an hour and a half from San Antonio. Why did she always stay in hotels? Why didn't she ever ask to sleep on my couch like she used to? When the sun rose, I was still on the couch, with my dress wrinkled and makeup smeared. My iPhone showed 17 missed calls from my mother. Beatrice had told her everything, probably in a romanticized version where they were 2 lovers who couldn't resist the cruel fate that made them meet through me. I called the office and said I wouldn't be going to work. Simone, my assistant, noticed something was wrong from the tone of my voice but didn't insist. "Call me if you need anything, Marina. You never miss work. It must be something important." She was one of the few people I could trust completely. I went to take a shower, trying to wash away the sticky feeling from that night. Under the hot water, I finally cried. Not dramatic movie tears, but that tired crying of someone who had just lost 2 important people at once. My sister and my husband, the two I loved most in the world, had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. When I got out of the shower, I had 3 messages from Beatrice. Mari, we need to talk. It wasn't how we wanted you to find out. Call me, please. I know it's difficult, but we can resolve this like adults. I deleted them all without responding. For the first time in years, I spent the entire day doing absolutely nothing productive. I watched Netflix, ordered Chinese food that cost $40 and arrived cold, ignored the phone that rang every 2 hours. It was as if I needed a whole day to process the fact that my life had completely changed overnight. That evening, David showed up to get some clothes. He still had the keys, still felt entitled to enter the apartment I had bought alone as if nothing had happened. He tried to talk, explain, justify himself while packing a suitcase with his things. It wasn't planned, Mari. It just happened. As if betrayal were a meteorological accident, something beyond human control. B was going through a difficult time, needed someone to talk to. How long have you been together? I asked, watching him fold the polo shirts I had bought for him at Nordstrom. Officially? Since January. 4 months. 4 months of lies, fake kisses, empty I love yous before sleep. While I worked 60 hours a week to get the promotion, dreaming of our future together, he was building a new life with my sister. I'm going to find a lawyer, I warned, sitting on the king-size bed I had bought the year before. David stopped packing his suitcase and looked at me for the first time since he arrived. Mari, it doesn't have to be like this. We can resolve everything among ourselves civilly. Divide things fairly without complications. Civilly. Divide things fairly. As if betrayal were an issue that could be resolved with politeness and goodwill. As if he had any right to what I had built. After he left taking 2 suitcases and promising to come back on the weekend to get the rest, I called Helena, my best friend since college and a family law attorney in Houston. I told her everything, trying to keep my voice steady. Helena listened to me in silence and when I finished, sighed deeply. Marina, I'm so sorry. I know how much you loved him and trusted your sister. She paused. About the divorce, I need you to bring all the marriage documents, bank statements, deeds, proof of income, investments, everything. I'll put together the best case possible for you. Helena, I don't care about the money. I just want this to end quickly. Don't say that, Marina. You fought hard to build what you have. You're not going to hand it over to someone who betrayed you. Do you have any idea how much your assets are worth today? I didn't have an exact idea, but I knew it was substantial. The apartment was worth at least $400,000. I had about $100,000 in investments, a stake in a startup worth at least $50,000, plus the new salary of $16,000 monthly. I scheduled the meeting for the following week and hung up. That's when I remembered. I needed to organize all the important documents. It wasn't something I did regularly. Who thinks about divorce when they're happy in marriage? I went to the office I had set up in the 2nd bedroom of the apartment, where I kept everything organized in colored folders like a person obsessed with control. Bank statements from the last 2 years, tax returns, investment statements from Fidelity and Charles Schwab. It was impressive to see on paper everything I had achieved at 29. I was proud of what I had built, but now everything seemed so fragile, as if it could disappear because of a betrayal and a poorly conducted divorce process. I took the green folder where I kept the marriage documents. Birth certificate, marriage certificate from Travis County, contract for... I stopped with the marriage certificate in my hand, frowning. There was something written there about property regime that suddenly caught my attention. Separate property regime. Complete separation of assets. Why complete separation? Most couples in Texas chose community property, partial community of assets. That's when I remembered. Vaguely, like a memory that was stored in a dusty drawer of my brain. Prenuptial agreement. I had insisted on making a prenuptial agreement 4 years ago. I ran to the small safe I had installed in the bedroom closet. It had been so long since I'd opened it that I almost forgot the combination. My birthday inverted. Inside, between the apartment deed and my passport, there it was. A sealed envelope with the seals of the Travis County Clerk's office. Prenuptial agreement. Marina Santos Silva and David Oliveira Ferreira. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. I vaguely remembered insisting on this at the time, but the details were hazy. It had been 4 years ago. I was so in love and happy that the legal aspects of marriage seemed just a necessary formality to officialize our love. But now, alone in the bedroom at 2 a.m, holding those pages printed on letterhead from the law firm, I felt something I hadn't experienced in days. A hint of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't lose everything I had built. Maybe there was something in those papers that could protect me from my sister's greed and my husband's irresponsibility. I took a deep breath, turned on the bedside lamp, and began reading every word with the attention of someone deciphering their own future. The memory came back like a movie being rewound. It was a sunny Saturday in April, 2 weeks before our wedding. I was 25 and had just signed the purchase contract for my first apartment, a modern 2-bedroom loft in downtown Austin that cost $350,000. David was nervous about the ceremony preparations, complaining about costs that were getting out of control. "Mari, are you sure you need all this?" he said, looking at the vendor list spread on my kitchen table. $15,000 catering, $8,000 photographer, $12,000 decoration. It's a lot of money. A lot. It was a lot of money indeed, especially for him, who earned about $4,000 a month at the BMW dealership. For me, who had just received a substantial promotion and was earning $12,000 monthly, it was an investment in our special day. But I understood his concern. He had grown up in a family where every dollar was counted. "David, relax. I'll pay most of it. You contribute what you can. What's important is us being together, celebrating our love." It was in this context that I mentioned the prenuptial agreement. Not as mistrust, but as natural protection for someone who had significant assets. My lawyer at the time, Dr. Patricia Williams, had suggested it during the apartment purchase. "Marina, you're young, successful, and accumulating assets rapidly. A prenup is sensible, especially when there's significant difference in assets between spouses. It's not mistrust, it's intelligent protection." When I talked to David about this on a Tuesday night, he laughed. Literally laughed, almost spitting out the Shinerbach beer he was drinking. "Prenuptial? Isn't that rich people nonsense? We love each other, Mari. Love doesn't need papers to prove anything. These things are for couples who enter marriage already thinking about divorce. It's not about love, David. It's legal protection. For both of us. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong," he interrupted me, pulling my hand. "We're going to be happy forever. You're being paranoid, baby." He made a face like he didn't understand the necessity, but eventually agreed when I explained it was something that would make me more comfortable. "If it's important to you, fine. But honestly, I think you're complicating something that should be simple." We went to Dr. Williams's office on a Thursday morning. I remember David was hungover because he had gone out with his dealership colleagues the night before for the last bachelor's outing. He arrived 15 minutes late, somewhat sleepy, complaining that he had lost an important sale because of the appointment. "Sorry, Mari. Had to come straight from work. Johnson wanted to close a deal today, but I said I had an important appointment with you." Dr. Williams, an elegant 50-year-old woman with gray hair and impeccable suits, explained the basic terms with the patience of someone who had given that presentation hundreds of times. Complete separation of assets. Each spouse maintains their individual patrimony. No division in case of divorce except for assets acquired jointly with clear proof of mutual contribution. "It's important to understand," she said, looking mainly at David, "that this agreement protects both parties. If you acquire significant assets during the marriage, they will also be protected." "You understand, David?" I asked, observing his somewhat lost expression. Yes. Each one keeps what's theirs, right? Makes sense?" It made no sense at all that he had understood completely, because David never showed interest in complex legal or financial matters. When I tried to talk about investments or financial planning, he would change the subject or make jokes about me being too uptight with money, but he signed all the pages with the ease of someone signing a grocery list. 15 pages of dense legal text, specific clauses about properties, investments, future businesses, inheritance. David barely read the section titles. "There, now you can marry in peace," Dr. Williams said, smiling as she stamped and filed the copies. "I hope to never see you here professionally again." On the way back, driving my Honda Civic through Austin streets, David commented, "I still think this contract thing is kind of weird, but if it makes you calmer, what's important is that in 2 weeks we'll be married, husband and wife forever." He really didn't understand what he had signed. For David, that was just another necessary bureaucracy to officialize our love, like getting the marriage license or choosing the rings. He didn't comprehend that he was giving up any right to my present and future patrimony. And I, in love and confident that we would be happy forever, didn't mind his lack of attention to details. After all, love was more important than any paper, wasn't it? We were going to build a life together, share everything, be a modern and partnered couple. The contract was just a formality that would never be necessary. How wrong I was. Now, 4 years later, Alone in the bedroom at 3 in the morning with the contract in my hands, I finally understood the value of that rich people nonsense. I read each page with redoubled attention, as if I were deciphering a secret code that could save my life. The legal words that at the time seemed just formality, now shone on the page like precious diamonds. Complete separation of property. Each spouse shall maintain individual ownership of all property owned prior to marriage and all property acquired during the marriage. Each spouse. Property acquired during marriage. The apartment I bought before getting married. The investments I made monthly, the stock applications, the stake in the tech startup I bought 2 years ago. All of this was exclusively mine. In the event of dissolution of marriage, there shall be no division of property, with each party retaining the entirety of their individual assets. Dissolution of marriage. There shall be no division of property. David had no right to anything, absolutely nothing of what I had built. I continued reading, looking for some clause that could complicate things, some loophole he could use to claim part of my patrimony, but there wasn't any. The contract was crystal clear, comprehensive, and bulletproof. Dr. Williams had done impeccable work. Spousal support waiver. Both parties hereby waive any right to spousal support, alimony, or maintenance from the other party. Alimony. David had no right even to alimony, and considering he earned much less than me, theoretically, he would be the one who could ask for financial support. For the first time in 3 days, I smiled. A small smile, but genuine. David had signed his own financial sentence 4 years ago, without even realizing it. And Beatrice... Oh, Beatrice... She had probably seduced my husband thinking he would be her gateway to a financially comfortable life. What delicious irony. I continued reading the specific clauses. Debt separation, each one responsible for their own. Future businesses. Corporate participation remained individual. Intellectual property. Royalties and patents were not shared. Inheritance. Assets received from family remained with the original recipient. It was complete armor. David had no right to a cent of what I had built. And more importantly, I had no responsibility for his debts. I remembered he had financed a Ford F-150 pickup the year before, plus had a high-limit credit card that he used frequently. I took my laptop and started making a mental list of my current patrimony. Apartment valued at least $400,000. Investments in stocks and funds totaling about $100,000. Stake in the startup I founded with 2 college colleagues worth at least $50,000 in the last contribution. Checking and savings account with $40,000. Paid-off car valued at $20,000. More than $600,000 in net worth at 29. And David had no right to any of it. Even better, my new salary as commercial director would be $16,000 monthly, plus performance-based bonuses that could reach $20,000 per month in the best quarters, while David would continue earning his $4,000 or $5,000 monthly selling cars. For the first time in days, I smiled. A small smile, but genuine. David had signed his own financial sentence 4 years ago without even realizing it. And Beatrice? Oh, Beatrice. She had probably seduced my husband thinking he would be her gateway to a financially comfortable life. What delicious irony. I remembered the conversation we had last Christmas, when she complained about the injustice of me having everything. Marie, do you realize how frustrating it is? Beautiful apartment, new car, trips, while I kill myself working and barely pay rent. Now I understood it wasn't frustration, it was planning. Beatrice had seen in David an opportunity to finally get what she deserved without working for it. She didn't love him. She loved what she thought he could give her access to. I stored the contract back in the safe, but first took photos of all pages with my iPhone. I sent the images to Helena by email with the subject, "Gift from God." She responded in 15 minutes, even though it was almost 4 in the morning. "Marina, this changes everything. Call me tomorrow." For the first time since that horrible dinner at Terrazzo, I managed to sleep a few hours, and for the first time in years, I dreamed about my future, a future where I was completely free to be whoever I wanted to be, without anyone trying to steal what I had built. I woke up the next morning with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in days. While having coffee in my modern kitchen, looking out the 10th floor window at the Austin skyline, I began connecting dots that before seemed like innocent coincidences. Beatrice had always shown suspicious interest in my financial life. It wasn't just fraternal curiosity. There was a calculating intensity in her questions that now made complete sense. "How much do you pay in rent for this apartment?" she had asked during a visit last year. When I explained it was financed, not rented, her eyes lit up. "Wow, it must be worth a fortune." She asked about my salary with uncommon frequency. "Mari, how much are you earning now?" Just to situate myself in the market, she'd say, as if she were comparing with her own opportunities as a freelancer. When I mentioned I was investing in stocks, she wanted to know specific amounts. I'm thinking about starting to invest too. I need a reference. I remembered a specific conversation during last year's Christmas. We were at our parents' house in San Antonio, and Beatrice had had a few too many glasses of wine. Mari, do you realize how frustrating it is to see you having everything? Beautiful apartment, new car, trips, expensive clothes, while I kill myself working and can barely pay rent. Beatrice, you can have all this too. It's a matter of working hard and making smart choices, I replied, trying to be encouraging. Oh, sure, everyone has the same opportunities, right? You were always the perfect daughter, the smart one, the one who gets everything easy. I have to kill myself to get crumbs. At the time, I thought it was just the wine talking. Now I realized it was envy and resentment accumulated over years. Beatrice genuinely believed she deserved what I had, but without the corresponding effort. And David, poor David. He was never an ambitious person financially. He was satisfied with his dealership salary, with his simple life of weekend beer and football on television. But I noticed how he sometimes looked at the things I bought with a mixture of admiration and discomfort. $400 for a purse, Mari? That's almost my rent, he commented when I bought a coach at Nordstrom. It wasn't criticism. It was more like he was trying to process a financial world completely different from his. Beatrice had probably planted seeds in his head. Imagine when you two get divorced, David. Half of all this will be yours. She didn't know about the prenuptial agreement because I never told anyone in the family. It was a private matter between me and my husband. Now I understood the conversation I overheard by chance a few months ago. David was on the phone on the balcony and I thought it was work. But now I remembered hearing, I don't know if it's the right time. She suspects something. I need to be sure. At the time, I thought he was talking about some complicated sale. Now I realized he was probably talking to Beatrice about how and when to reveal their relationship. The most painful part was realizing they had planned that moment at the restaurant. The choice of terrazzo, on the day of my promotion, the way they arrived together, the poorly disguised satisfaction on their faces. It wasn't an impulse or a desperate confession. It was theater. They wanted to humiliate me publicly, catch me off guard, see me fall apart, and they probably expected me to react with desperation, begging David to come back, offering anything to save my marriage. Too bad they didn't know about the prenuptial agreement. I spent the weekend organizing my strategy. I called Helena early Monday morning, before even going to work. Marina girl, this contract is a work of legal art. David has no right to absolutely anything. We can process the divorce in 60 days if he doesn't contest. And if he contests? Based on what? He signed the prenup. Everything is registered. There are no vices of consent. Unless he proves coercion or fraud, which is impossible, he's screwed. Screwed. David was screwed and didn't even know it yet. Helena, I want to do something. I'm going to call them and propose a civilized conversation about the divorce. I want to see their faces when they discover the truth. Marina, are you sure? It might be simpler to just file and be done with it. I'm sure. They humiliated me in public. I want to return the favor. 3 weeks passed since that night at Terrazzo. 3 weeks in which David came to get the rest of his things from the apartment, always accompanied by Beatrice, as if he needed protection or moral support. 3 weeks in which my mother called daily trying to mediate the situation, as if betrayal were a misunderstanding that could be resolved with a frank conversation. Marina, dear, I know you're hurt, but these things happen. David has always been a good boy and Beatrice is pregnant. Can't you think about the baby? Think about the baby. The baby that my sister was using as an excuse to steal my husband and, consequently, my patrimony. Mom, I won't discuss this. David and I are getting divorced, period. But Marina, you built a life together. The apartment, the plans. Ah, yes. The apartment. The plans. My mother also believed David had a right to half of everything. Beatrice had probably filled the whole family's heads with stories about how I was selfish and petty for not graciously accepting the betrayal. In the 4th week, I called Beatrice. She answered on the 2nd ring as if she were waiting for my call. Mari, so good that you called. We really need to talk. Hi, B. Look, I thought a lot about this whole situation, and I think you guys are right. There's no point in holding grudges. We're adults. These things happen. Silence on the other end of the line. She wasn't expecting this reaction. Really? You're okay with this? I'm trying to accept it. I mean, you fell in love, right? It wasn't anyone's fault. And now there's the baby to think about. Wow, Murray, You can't imagine how relieved I am hearing this. David was so worried, thinking you were going to make drama, complicate the divorce. Complicate the divorce. How interesting. As if I were the complicated person in the story. Not at all. Can we meet to talk civilly about how to resolve everything? Without fights, just to settle things like adults. Maybe dinner again, but this time for closure, not for surprises? Beatrice laughed nervously. Of course, that would be great. David will be so happy. He was afraid you would, well, make a scene. No, imagine. Scene for what? Let's meet at Terrazzo again, since that's where it all started. Saturday night? Perfect. Mari, you can't imagine how important this is for us. Especially now, with the baby coming. I hung up the phone smiling. Saturday night would be interesting. Very interesting. I spent the following days preparing like an actress rehearsing for the performance of her life. I chose the outfit, an elegant black dress that conveyed seriousness and control. I practiced in the mirror the calm and resigned expression I wanted to maintain throughout the entire conversation. Helena thought the idea was risky. Marina, are you sure you want to do this? It might be more efficient to simply notify them through a lawyer. Helena, they humiliated me in public. They planned everything to see me fall apart in front of a restaurant full of people. They deserve the same treatment. And if they suspect something, they won't suspect. They're too busy planning how to spend my inheritance. I arrived at Terrazzo on Saturday punctually at 8 at night. I asked for the same table as last time. The maitre d' recognized me and made a comment about hoping tonight would be a happier night. If he only knew. David and Beatrice arrived together again, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. They were relaxed, smiling, holding hands like a couple in love who could finally show themselves in public. Beatrice wore a dress that highlighted her still small but noticeable belly. Mari! Beatrice hugged me with genuine effusiveness. You look beautiful. Is that dress new? Thank you. You both look well too. How's the pregnancy? Great. We're already thinking about names. David wants Michael if it's a boy. I prefer Gabriel. David pulled out the chair for Beatrice to sit, a chivalrous gesture he rarely made for me. Marina, thank you for agreeing to talk like this. Peacefully, I was afraid that I would make drama? Imagine, David. We're all adults here. We ordered the same bottle of Chianti as last time. The irony wasn't lost on any of us, but this time the atmosphere was one of disguised celebration. They thought they had won the grand prize. So, David said after the first sip, about the divorce, we wanted to propose doing everything amicably. Divide things fairly without complications. Divide things fairly, I repeated, savoring the words. Tell me more about this, David. What do you consider fair? Beatrice and David exchanged a quick glance. They had rehearsed this conversation. Well, we can sell the apartment and split it 50-50. The investments too. And now with your new promotion, alimony will help a lot until I can stabilize with B and the baby. Alimony. He really believed I would pay alimony to him while he raised a child with my sister. I slowly picked up my purse as if I were looking for something specific. David and Beatrice watched me expectantly, probably thinking I was going to take out some divorce documents for us to sign right there, in a friendly reconciliation that would benefit them immensely. Instead, I placed the courthouse envelope with the prenuptial agreement on the table. The paper yellowed by time made a dry sound when it hit the wood. Before we talk about division, I need to clarify something important that you seem to have forgotten. David frowned, looking at the envelope. What is that? Our prenuptial agreement, David. Remember? The one you signed 4 years ago, saying it was rich people nonsense? The color instantly drained from his face. Beatrice looked confused between the two of us. What agreement? You made a prenuptial agreement? We did. And David signed it without even reading it properly. I took the pages out of the envelope and placed them on the table, open so both could see. Complete separation of assets. Do you remember what that means? David picked up the pages with trembling hands. His eyes ran over the lines, trying to process words he clearly didn't understand completely 4 years ago. Calm down, Mari, Beatrice said, her voice losing its previous confidence. Even with an agreement, you were married. There's partial community property, division of assets acquired during marriage. Not when there's complete separation of assets, Beatrice. I pointed to the specific clause. It's here. Each spouse shall maintain individual ownership of all property owned prior to marriage and all property acquired during the marriage. Everything acquired during marriage also stays with whoever acquired it. But this can't be legal, David protested, his voice rising an octave. The apartment, the investments. I lived there. I contributed to expenses. You contributed $300 a month for groceries and gas, David. I paid the $1,800 for financing, the $200 for condo fees, internet, electricity, phone, insurance. Your $300 doesn't give you property rights over a $400,000 apartment. Beatrice frantically flipped through the pages, as if looking for some loophole, some salvation. But alimony? He has a right to alimony. I smiled for the first time that night. Page 5, Section 3. Spousal support waiver. Both parties hereby waive any right to spousal support, alimony, or maintenance. David waived his right to alimony when he signed this. I didn't know what I was signing, David shouted, drawing attention from neighboring tables. You tricked me. I tricked you? David, you were there when the lawyer explained each clause. You said you understood. There are witnesses. Everything is registered at the courthouse. The expression on Beatrice's face was changing from confusion to horror. Reality was hitting like a runaway train. You mean he has no right to anything? Nothing. Zero. Zilch. I put the papers back in the envelope. David leaves the marriage exactly as he entered, with his financed pickup, his clothes, and his credit card debts. David ran his hand over his face, finally understanding the magnitude of the situation. Marina, for God's sake, we can talk about this. You can't leave me with nothing. I'm going to have a child to support. You are going to have a child to support, I emphasized. With your car salesman salary, which, by the way, with child support will be quite tight. Child support? Beatrice asked, her voice coming out as a whisper. Of course, the father has to pay child support. In Texas, it's usually 20% of net income for one child. If David earns $5,000 gross, about $3,800 net remains. 20% of that is $760 per month, forever, until the child turns 18. The two looked at each other in panic. They clearly hadn't done these calculations. Plus medical expenses, daycare when necessary, clothes, education. It's going to be quite expensive to have a baby, guys. David sank into his chair. My God, Marina, how can you be so cold? So calculating? Calculating? Me? You two planned this betrayal for months, humiliated me publicly in this same restaurant, and I'm the calculating one. Beatrice was clearly doing mental math. If David earned $5,000 a month and was going to pay $800 in support, $4,200 would remain, minus taxes, about $3,400 net, to support him, her, and a baby. Beatrice, how much do you earn as a freelancer again? I asked, knowing the answer well. It varies, about $2,000 a month when there are projects. About $2,000 when there are projects. So you'll live on $5,400 monthly at best, for 3 people. Living where? At my house in San Antonio, she murmured. That 1-bedroom apartment you rent for $800? It's going to be cramped with a baby, don't you think? The silence at the table was deafening. Around us, other customers dined happily, oblivious to the financial drama unfolding just meters away. Marina, David tried once more. Are you really going to do this? Leave us with nothing? I know we hurt you, but, David, you didn't hurt me. You tried to rob me. You thought I was an emotional idiot who would hand over half of my $600,000 patrimony because you were in love. $600,000? Beatrice repeated, incredulous. Surprise! I'm richer than you imagined. And now, with the promotion, I'll earn $16,000 a month, while you fight over money for diapers. David buried his face in his hands. I'm an idiot. A complete idiot. Finally, something we agree on. Beatrice tried one last card. Mari, you're my sister. We've always been family. You can't abandon us like this. And your niece or nephew? Don't you want to help? Beatrice. You tried to steal my husband thinking you'd steal my fortune along with him. You calculated wrong. And now you'll have to live with the consequences of your choices. But family doesn't betray family. Family doesn't humiliate family in public restaurants. Family doesn't seduce their sister's husband out of greed. I got up from the table, leaving 2 $50 bills, again more than enough for my part. Your lawyers can contact mine, Helena Williams, in Houston. She has all the necessary information. Marina, wait. David stood up, trying to follow me. No, David, you waited. You waited 4 months to tell me the truth. You waited until the day of my promotion to maximize the humiliation. You waited until you thought you had everything planned perfectly. Now I'm going to make you wait. Wait for what? Beatrice asked, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Wait to see what it's like to be poor, what it's like to live counting pennies, what it's like not being able to pay for dinner at a $200 restaurant. I stopped at the door. looking back at both of them. Maybe now you'll understand why I work so hard to have what I have, and why I protect what's mine. I left Terrazzo hearing Beatrice start to cry and David cursing under his breath. In the parking lot, sitting in my car, I allowed myself a moment of pure satisfaction. They had tried to destroy me and ended up destroying themselves. My phone rang. It was Helena. So, how was the theater? Better than Broadway. You should have seen their faces when they understood they wouldn't get anything. Marina, you're diabolical, and I completely approve. Helena, can I file for divorce tomorrow? I can file the papers Monday. In 60 days, you'll be free, and they'll still be poor. I drove home smiling for the first time in weeks. Actually, smiling more than I had smiled in years. 6 months later, life had settled into a new normalcy that I had never imagined possible. The divorce was finalized in exactly 60 days. David didn't contest, probably because any competent lawyer would have explained that he didn't have the slightest chance of winning. Helena did impeccable work, and I officially became single on a sunny July morning. Through social media and my mother's inevitable comments, I followed from afar the reality that David and Beatrice were facing. It was like watching a car accident in slow motion. You know you should look away, but you can't. David continued working at the BMW dealership, but things weren't easy. With the unstable economy, luxury car sales had decreased, and his commission had plummeted along with it. According to my mother, he was earning about $3,500 a month, much less than the $5,000 he used to make. Marina, David is going through difficulties, my mother said during one of our weekly phone conversations. With the baby's support, very little is left for him to live on. What a shame, I replied, without a hint of genuine sympathy. But babies are expensive. He should have thought about that beforehand. Little Sophia had been born in September, a little girl who, from photos circulating in the family, had David's eyes and Beatrice's stubbornness. The $800 monthly child support was being automatically deducted from David's salary, leaving even less money for his own expenses. Beatrice had moved back to our parents' house in San Antonio. The one-bedroom apartment she rented was impossible for a couple with a baby, and even splitting bills, they couldn't afford anything bigger. Our parents, already retired and living on limited income, now supported 3 adults and a baby on my father's retirement. Beatrice is trying to get more clients, but it's difficult with the baby, my mother continued. And David? He seems so tired lately, working late, driving an hour and a half every day between Austin and San Antonio. David had tried to move to San Antonio to be closer to the family, but couldn't get a transfer at the dealership. Now he made the daily commute, spending a fortune on gas he could barely afford. He asked to talk to you, my mother said hesitantly. Maybe you could resolve some things. Mom, we have nothing to resolve. The divorce is finalized, he has a new family, let everyone follow their own life. It was true. I had followed my life spectacularly. With the divorce resolved and the betrayal overcome, my energy multiplied exponentially. I concentrated all my strength on my career and business, and the results exceeded my most optimistic expectations. As commercial director, I beat all first-quarter targets, securing the maximum bonus. My effective salary reached $22,000 a month in some periods. The startup I was a partner in secured new investment, tripling the value of my stake. In October, I found an even larger and more modern loft in downtown Austin. 2 floors, 3 bedrooms, private terrace with lake view. I sold my old apartment for $500,000, $80,000 profit in 5 years, and bought the loft in cash for $700,000. I renovated everything from scratch. German kitchen, complete automation, private gym, office with panoramic view. I spent $200,000 on the renovation, but the result was an architectural work of art that became the cover of Austin Home and Design magazine. Wow, Marina, said Simone, my assistant, when she came to see the new loft. This looks like a movie house. You've achieved the American dream. It was true. At 30, I had a net worth of over $1 million, a solid career at an international company, and complete freedom to do whatever I wanted. I traveled to Europe 3 times that year. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, always alone, always first class, always staying at the best hotels. I bought clothes at boutiques I previously considered too expensive, dined at Michelin-starred restaurants, shopped without looking at prices. The loneliness? Curiously, I didn't feel it. After years of being betrayed by those I trusted most, the peace of being alone was almost addictive. I didn't need to explain my expenses to anyone, didn't need to consider others' opinions in my decisions, didn't need to share my space or my time. I started therapy, not for sadness, but for growth. Dr. Rebecca Chen, an incredible psychologist of Asian origin, helped me process not just the betrayal, but years of toxic relationships disguised as family love. "Marina, you grew up believing you had to take care of everyone around you," she said in one session. "Your sister, your parents, your ex-husband. When was the last time someone took care of you?" It was a simple question that made me cry for 15 minutes. I had always been the provider, the responsible one, the problem solver. I never stopped to think if anyone was taking care of me. "Maybe it's time for you to put yourself first," Dr. Chen suggested, "and discover who you are when you're not supporting other people." That's exactly what I did. During the holiday season, I received several messages from Beatrice. First reconciliation attempts, then direct requests for financial help. "Mari, I know you're upset, but we're sisters. Sophia is your niece. Can't you at least help with some baby things?" "Marina, expenses with Sophia are very high. Diapers, medicine, pediatrician. David is killing himself working but can't cover everything. Mari, for God's sake. Answer my messages. We need help, and you're the only person in the family who can afford it." I read them all without responding. I blocked the number after the 10th message. My mother tried to mediate. "Marina, whatever the hurt, the child is innocent. Don't you want to meet your niece?" "Mom, when Beatrice decided to seduce my husband, she made a choice. Now she's living with the consequences of that choice. It's not my responsibility to solve the financial problems they created. But you have so much money." "I have so much money because I worked hard to have it, and because I protected what I built." If Beatrice wanted financial stability for her child, she should have thought about that before getting pregnant by a man who earns $4,000 a month. It was harsh with my mother, but necessary. The whole family had gotten used to the idea that I was the personal emergency bank for any crisis. Not anymore. On my 30th birthday in December, I organized a party at the new loft. I invited work colleagues, college friends, some people I met traveling, 50 elegant people, French champagne, professional catering, live musician. Looking out my terrace window at the Austin lights, with a glass of Dom Perignon in my hand, and surrounded by people who genuinely enjoyed my company, I felt deep gratitude. Gratitude that David had betrayed me. Without the betrayal, I would never have discovered my own strength, never would have learned to set boundaries, never would have realized I could be completely happy alone. Gratitude for the prenuptial agreement that my younger self had the wisdom to make. Those papers saved me from years of legal battle and allowed me to start over immediately. Gratitude even for Beatrice. Without her envy and greed, I never would have learned that not all family deserves unconditional loyalty. Some people are toxic regardless of blood ties. The week after my birthday, I received one last contact attempt. Not from Beatrice or David, but from my father. "Marina, your mother didn't want me to call, but I need to talk to you. Things are very difficult here at home. David lost his job at the dealership last week. Year-end cuts." My father rarely interfered in family conflicts. When he called, it was because the situation was really critical. "And what do you want me to do, Dad?" "I don't know, daughter. I don't know what to do anymore. There are 4 people here at home, a small child, and now, without David's income. Your mother is talking about going back to work, but she's 70 years old." I felt a pang of guilt. Genuine, for the first time in months. My parents weren't to blame for the situation. They were just trying to help a daughter in difficulties as parents do. "Dad, I can help you, but I won't give money to David or Beatrice directly. If you need something specific, electric bill, groceries, pediatrician for Sophia, send me the bills and I'll pay them directly. Marina, that's my offer. I'll help you, who are innocent in this story. But I won't finance the bad choices David and Beatrice made." My father accepted, relieved. In the following months, I received some bills by email. $200 electric bill, $300 groceries, $150 pediatric consultation. Trivial amounts for me, but they made a difference for them. I never had direct contact with David or Beatrice again. According to my father, David got a job at a smaller dealership, earning half what he used to earn. Beatrice continued doing sporadic freelance work, but with a small child, it was impossible to work full-time. They had moved to a trailer park in San Antonio. $500 monthly rent for a tiny space, but it was what they could afford. Sophia's support continued being automatically deducted, leaving even less money for them. "They fight a lot about money," my father told me in a conversation. David blames Beatrice for insisting on the divorce. Beatrice blames him for losing his job. It's a cycle. It was exactly what I imagined would happen. When people get together for wrong reasons, greed, envy, opportunism, and financial reality knocks on the door. False love disappears quickly. 2 years after the betrayal, my life was completely transformed. Not just financially, but emotionally. I learned to say no without guilt. I learned that self-esteem is non-negotiable. I learned that some people are incapable of genuinely loving. They can only see other people as resources to be exploited. I started dating Daniel, an architect I met at an art exhibition. He had his own successful company, his own resources, his own ambitions. Our relationship was based on real partnership, not financial or emotional dependence. "You have impressive strength," he told me one night, while we dined on my loft's terrace. "But also an inner peace that's rare." He was right. I had found a peace that came from knowing exactly who I was and what I deserved. I no longer needed anyone's approval, no longer needed to support people who didn't contribute to my life. Sophia turned 2 without me meeting her personally. From photos my mother insisted on showing on her phone, she was a beautiful and apparently healthy child. I felt a hint of curiosity about her, but not enough to reconnect with Beatrice and David. Some friends thought I was being cruel. "Marina, she's your niece. Don't you miss family?" "I have family," I would respond. "My parents, who love me unconditionally. My true friends, whom I've built over the years. Family isn't just blood. It's who really cares about your well-being." It was true. Simone, my assistant, was more present in my life than Beatrice ever was. Helena continued being a close friend and advisor. Dr. Chen helped me grow in ways I didn't even know I needed. On the 3rd anniversary of the betrayal, I received a message from an unknown number. It was David. "Marina, I know you don't want to talk to me, but I need to tell you something. You were right about everything. About me, about Beatrice, about the money. I was an idiot and destroyed the best thing I had in life. I hope you're happy." Reading that message didn't bring me satisfaction or anger, just a kind of peaceful closure. David had finally understood what he lost, but it was too late. I had moved on completely. I deleted the message without responding. Today, at 32, I look back and see how that horrible night at Terrazzo was actually the best gift life could have given me. It forced me to discover who I really was when I wasn't being exploited or underestimated. I'm now executive director of the company, with a salary of $300,000 annually. My net worth has exceeded $2 million. I travel the world regularly, both for work and pleasure. I have a healthy relationship with someone who values me and contributes equally to our partnership. More importantly, I learned that people who really love you don't try to steal your peace, your money, or your dignity. They celebrate your successes, respect your boundaries, and build together with you. David continues living in the trailer park, working jobs that pay little, fighting with Beatrice about money they don't have. Beatrice continues sending occasional messages asking for help, which I continue ignoring. Sophia is growing up in a family that struggles financially because of her parents' selfish choices. Sometimes I wonder if I should feel guilty for having so much while they have so little. But then I remember, they tried to rob me. They planned my humiliation. They calculated my emotional and financial destruction. The fact that they calculated wrong isn't my fault. I built everything I have with honest work, intelligent decisions, and adequate protection of my assets. They tried to take a shortcut through betrayal, and discovered that shortcuts often lead to dead ends. I learned that self-esteem and dignity are non-negotiable, that not all family deserves loyalty, that underestimated people can surprise in devastating ways, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, while those who tried to harm you reap the consequences of their own choices. My story isn't about revenge, it's about justice. It's about discovering that it's worth protecting what you build, and that not everyone deserves access to your life. And it's about learning that when you stop supporting people who only exploit you, much more energy remains to build something truly extraordinary.